I've always wondered about that whole mind-body thing, like how doing yoga or whatever it is doesn't just, make you feel good, but like there's actual measurable changes happening because of it. And get this, today's deep dive takes that idea to a whole other level. We're talking about whether those Zen vibes could actually maybe make you some money. It was that article you sent, the one about HealthyCoin, that got me thinking about all this.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a fascinating intersection. Wellness and technology, for sure. Brings up some big questions, too, about how much our health data is worth and what it could even mean to really own that data. Yeah.
Well, so the article starts off talking about how yoga affects stress. Pretty familiar stuff, right? But I was really interested in how they explain the actual science behind it.
It's not just like people saying they feel better after yoga anymore. There's tons of research now that shows how yoga can literally change how your brain reacts to stress. Like the article mentioned a study where people who did yoga, like regularly, their cortisol levels were way lower.
Cortisol levels, that's the...
It's the main stress hormone,
Right, right, of course.
right?
And what happened with the yoga people?
So their cortisol dropped something like 15% on average,
Yeah.
which is huge, by the way, because when your cortisol is high all the time, it causes a ton of health problems.
Wow, 15%. So it's like yoga's training your brain to just chill out, and there's actual data to prove it's working.
That's wild. But
Yeah.
I don't get how that connects to like actually making money.
Well, that's where this healthy coin thing comes in. Their whole idea is that this kind of health data, it's valuable, and they're saying they'll pay you for it. Okay, hold on. Explain this healthy coin thing to me. It sounds kind of too good to be true, right? Like I do my yoga, my Fitbit or whatever tracks it all, and boom, I'm suddenly rich.
Well, it's not quite that simple. The article makes it sound a little easier than it probably is.
Mhm.
But the basic idea is that HealthyCoin would be this platform where if you wanted to, you could share your health data. And it's anonymized, obviously, so none of your personal info is attached to it,
Anonymized, meaning like...
meaning they strip it of anything that could identify you. Your name, where you live, it's all gone. But even without that stuff, the data is still valuable. Researchers who are studying stress could use it, or people making wellness apps, even insurance companies figuring out risk and all that.
Hmm. Interesting. So in a way, we're already creating all this valuable data just by like living our lives, wearing a smartwatch, tracking our steps, even just doing yoga. But what HealthyCoin's saying is they'll give you control over that data and maybe even pay you for it, right?
Exactly. They're talking about a system where you earn these things called HYC tokens, basically like digital points or whatever, just on their platform.
Yeah.
And you get those for sharing your data.
Mhm.
Then you can theoretically trade those tokens in for money or for different products.
Wait, so let me get this straight. I could actually earn rewards, maybe even cash, just for like breathing deeply on my yoga mat.
That's the general idea, yeah. Of course, it's very new, and the article brought up a lot of questions about how it would actually work in the real world.
Yeah, a million questions come to mind. Like, first of all, is this even legal? And how do they make sure that all your data actually stays private?
You're asking all the right questions.
Yeah.
And those are exactly the issues we're going to get into in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so let's get into those questions then. Because on the one hand, this whole healthy coin thing, it's a really interesting idea. Getting rewarded for data that my phone and my smartwatch are already collecting anyway, kind of cool. But it also feels new, like almost a little too new.
Definitely. And the article did mention a few things to think about. For example, data security. Obviously, that's got to be their top priority. They talked about encryption, making it anonymous, all that. But how strong is that stuff really? Like, is it really truly secure?
No system is perfect, right? There's always going to be hackers, people trying to break in. So even if they get rid of my name, my address, all that, how do they stop someone from figuring out it's my data?
That's a good point. And it's not just about people outside the company trying to break in either.
Yeah.
The article touched on internal security too. Like, how do they make sure that their own employees or whoever else they're sharing this data with are doing everything by the book?
Right, that makes sense. But let's say, for argument's sake, that their security is top-notch, no weak points whatsoever. There's still a bigger question here. This whole idea only works if companies and researchers are actually willing to pay for all this health data, right? Is that even realistic?
That's the million-dollar question, for sure. And it kind of reflects something much bigger that's happening right now. Personal data is becoming more and more valuable all the time, which, on the one hand, could actually be a good thing for people. Imagine having actual control over your own data and even making money from it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like, instead of these big tech companies making bank off of our information, we could get a cut. But I gotta say, it just feels kind of off somehow.
I get it. And the article did mention some of the ethical stuff that comes up, for sure. For example, what happens when insurance companies start using this data to decide how much to charge people?
Dude, that's exactly what I was thinking. What if, like, my insurance company sees all this HealthyCoin data and it shows I'm not sleeping well, or that my stress levels are through the roof? Could they seriously use that against me?
It's definitely something to think about. And it shows how important it is to have really clear rules and regulations about all this. The article didn't really get into that, but it's super important to figure out who's allowed to see this data, what can they do with it, and what rights do we have as individuals to control what happens to our own information.
And it's not just insurance companies either, right? Like, what about employers? Could they get access to this stuff? Start using it to decide who to hire, who to promote. The possibilities are kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it can easily get out of control. And that's what the article leads us with more questions than answers. It's hinting at a future where basically everything about our health, from how often we do yoga to how well we sleep, maybe even our DNA, it all becomes something that can be bought and sold.
Okay, that's both cool and super creepy.
Yeah.
It's like this data could be amazing for medicine, for wellness, you name it. But it's also like we're opening up this whole can of worms.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it always comes back to this one question. Who really owns our health data?
Hmm.
Is it us, the people actually creating it? Or is it the companies collecting it and maybe making money off of it?
Man, that's a big one. And I feel like that debate is only going to get more and more intense as technology gets even crazier and companies find even more ways to get their hands on our personal info.
For sure. And this whole healthy coin thing, whether it ends up being a huge success or a total flop,
Yeah.
it shows us the kind of stuff we're going to have to deal with more and more in the next few years.
I mean, it's kind of hard to wrap my head around the good that could come from this tech and also the bad.
Yeah, no kidding. It really is a two-sided coin. Like
Yeah.
on the one side, you've got the potential for some incredible medical discoveries. I mean, if researchers had access to that much health data, even if it's anonymized,
Mhm.
think of what they could learn. We could see treatments tailored to each person, diagnoses way earlier than we do now,
Yeah.
maybe even cures for stuff we haven't even figured out how to approach yet.
Okay, yeah, that would be huge for sure.
Oh,
Especially for things like chronic stress, anxiety,
yeah.
which seems to be what this healthy coin thing is going for, right?
Exactly.
Mm.
And imagine if they could take data from thousands of people doing yoga and pinpoint exactly what works best. Like, are there certain poses, certain breathing exercises that are most effective for lowering stress hormones? That kind of info could help a lot of people.
That's the best case scenario, though. Right. Then there's the other side. What if this data gets misused? The privacy stuff, obviously. And should our health information even be something companies can buy and sell?
You're right. Those are all crucial questions.
Yeah.
And we can't just ignore them. Even if everyone's intentions are good, even if these platforms are super secure, there's always that risk that something could go wrong, something we didn't anticipate.
It really is like opening Pandora's box, huh? You never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. And that's why we need to talk about this now, before it's too late. Before this technology becomes so common that we don't even think about it. We have to consider the ethical side, the possible downsides, and make sure that whatever happens, people still have control over their own health data.
It's almost like we need a whole new set of rules, a whole new way of looking at this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, what are the ground rules for our health data? Who gets to see it? What can they use it for? What rights do we have?
All good questions,
Yeah.
really important ones. And honestly, there aren't easy answers.
Mm-hmm.
But this healthy coin thing, whether it takes off or not, it's a really good example of the stuff we're going to be facing more and more in the future.
It's true. So yeah, next time you're trying to find your zen on the yoga mat, you might find yourself thinking about data privacy too. Who knew downward dog could lead to such complicated questions, right?
Maybe that's the most important thing to take away from all this. Sometimes the best insights come from the most unexpected places.
Right.
And in a world where data is everything, we have to stay informed, ask the tough questions, and fight for our own digital well-being.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll leave you all with those big questions to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.